Iran is a country under siege. At least it might feel that way. Wars raging in the Middle East, with the United States operating close to Iran's border for over 20 years, and clear paths to war with both the United States and Israel have kept Iran on edge. Domestic instability and the chaos along its eastern border with Afghanistan following the Taliban takeover leave many question marks in where the region is going in the future. All the while, Iran has pursued nuclear weapons, while simultaneously not completing the process. For years now, reports have circulated that Iran is only weeks away from developing a nuclear weapon. Still, Iran has no choice but to pursue the bomb, and we're going to talk about why. We're going to take a look at this situation from Iran's perspective. We're not going to look at why exactly this situation is the way that it is. We have other videos for that on this channel. We're going to look at this situation from Iran's perspective and understand why exactly a nuclear weapon seems like the only feasible way for it to defend itself given the circumstances. Firstly, Iran has multiple threats both near its border and beyond. Of key concern is the positioning of US troops in Iraq, Syria, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, and Oman. These bases specifically run the length of Iran's western border and southern coastline, and can threaten trade moving to Iranian ports as well as Iran's ability to maneuver forces further west. Iran is also concerned with threats slightly further out, with more US troops in Syria, Jordan, Turkey, and Israel. It's not just that US troops are stationed in these places, it's also what US leaders continue to say about Iran. For instance, neither President Biden nor President Trump have been forgiving of Iran, and have routinely used harsh rhetoric when discussing how they plan to handle Iran. Under President Trump, this rhetoric became lethal with the death of the extremely popular IRGC general Qasem Soleimani during a visit to Baghdad. This event nearly led to a shooting war with the United States, with Iran retaliating by launching multiple ballistic missiles at a US base in Iraq. Still though, this event has forced Iranian leadership to take this matter even more seriously. Not only is the threat of war with the United States real, it can come at any time, and the rhetoric of US leaders should not be ignored. The war in Israel has only heightened this fear. Iran has its axis of resistance spread across the Middle East as a method of power projection. However, its control of these groups isn't always guaranteed. To boot, there are other groups like Hamas that collaborate with this axis, but also act on their own free will. This has led to conflicts like what's going on in Gaza that may not have had Iran's blessing ahead of time. Should Israel pivot from fighting Hamas to fighting Hezbollah in the north, Iran will be more involved than ever. At that point, it would not only be a war against potentially the United States, it would be a war against Israel, both nuclear powers, and with Israel equally if not more desperate to end the war quickly and on their terms. All of this has forced Iranian leaders to reconsider their position on just the conventional use of weapons and use of nuclear weapons. Conventionally, Iran has a pretty sizable military and some pretty sophisticated capabilities, with over 400,000 active duty troops. A key element of its military is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or the IRGC. This is the arm of the military that is loyal to the Ayatollah and is responsible for Iran's support for the axis of resistance. It's believed to have roughly 125,000 troops. The main uniformed army is more like what you would expect from a military, with the primary responsibility being the protection of Iran's territory. The axis of resistance, however, is quite different. This is the network of groups spread across the Middle East, all supported, equipped, trained, and somewhat directed by Iran. Iran may not have full control over each group, however they do have some say as the primary supporter of each group. The biggest and most notable group in this network is, of course, Hezbollah in Lebanon. Iran's military also has what's believed to be the largest ballistic missile program in the Middle East, capable of reaching targets as far as Europe. In a head-on-head fight against any other Middle Eastern power, including Israel, Iran is a pretty formidable foe and can certainly levy enough damage. However, against the United States, or against a combination of these opponents, Iran might find itself in a much more challenging position. The axis of resistance makes Iran extremely dangerous in gray zone warfare, meaning this area between active war and peace, like what we see in the Middle East right now. However, in a proper stand-up conventional war, Iran still has some pretty sophisticated capabilities, but not enough to really match what the United States has in terms of air power. That disparity poses existential risks for Iran. And it's not all about paranoia with Iran as well. There is real history here. Libya, Iraq, and Ukraine are all examples of countries that either held nuclear weapons at one time or pursued a nuclear program in some capacity, only for those ambitions to be scrapped. In each case, they would later be invaded or attacked attacked by a stronger foreign power, and in the case of Iraq or Libya, the leadership would be killed. We're still dealing with the fall of Saddam and Gaddafi to this very day, though in different forms. And Iran does not want to be just another chapter in this long history. Conversely, there are cases where countries pursued nuclear weapons and have managed to avoid similar fates. North Korea and Pakistan have nuclear weapons and have avoided being invaded or upended by rival powers. Just as there's a history of countries with failed nuclear ambitions falling apart to foreign powers later on, there's also a history of countries that succeeded in attaining nuclear weapons that have maintained their grip on power. And so Iran has pursued the bomb. However, they've thus far, at least not publicly, fully developed one. A civilian nuclear program has provided economic benefits while also providing cover for its nuclear development. And with this, they've reportedly come pretty close to completing their pursuit of its first nuclear bomb. In fact, at this current stage, they're likely already capable of producing at least one crude, dirty bomb, but not a proper nuclear weapon. This makes little difference in the grand scheme of things. I mean, a weapon of this size is still pretty devastating. However, there's really only so long that they can stay in this current phase. Ambiguity only goes so far. At some point, they'll need to produce, test, and reproduce nuclear weapons in order to fully establish nuclear deterrence. And Iran's leadership may see that they have no other choice in this. Basically, either make one and survive, or don't and become the next failed country in a long line of similar stories, even just in their region, even at the hands of the same powers that they find themselves lined up against. Getting nuclear weapons is not a guarantee for security though. Pretty much every nuclear power has to worry about security still, the stakes are just a lot higher. For Iran, nuclear weapons may actually increase the pressure within the region. Local rivals like Saudi Arabia and Turkey may feel the need to develop nuclear weapons for themselves to counterbalance Iranian nuclear arming. It may also draw greater attention from the United States, which has worked to prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapons. Israel may also look at Iran completely differently and through a more existential lens than they have already. So at least while Iran would have something that has historically shown that it would guarantee their security, at least for a time, it would also amp up the temperature in the region and make things way more volatile. And so we may just be sleepwalking our way to a nuclear Middle East that, well, would not be a good thing for anybody. And with all that, I want to hear your thoughts on this, so comment your thoughts down below. What do you think Iran thinks about nuclear weapons, and when do you think that they will have that capability? And what impact do you think that capability will have on the rest of the Middle East? Also leave a like if you found this video interesting. We have several other videos just like this on this channel, and that really helps this channel to grow. And subscribe if you want more content just like this. With all that, I'll see y'all next time. Later.